thrilled to bring in one of the sports best and NBC Sports insider, the one and only Nicole Auerbach. Nicole, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Of course. Busy week. People are still very angry about the CFP, and now Michigan is searching for a coach. So lots going on in December, apparently.
Yeah, I feel like this day and age is just there's too many distractions. That's what it is. Just
There are a lot.
just stick to what your job description is at this point, right? Stay out of trouble. Um, no, but let's stay on topic here. Don't want to waste anybody's time. But Oregon is we cover Oregon. We went to Oregon. We have a biased opinion a lot of the times, and this year we've done a decent job, right, Zach, of trying to stay,
I think at
in
least one of
between there.
us. Yeah.
But it's good to have you on here just to kind of get your opinion on Oregon, and just where they are in this season going into the playoffs. Uh, I wanted to ask you about the offensive line and the defensive line. Which one do you think in this playoff has the most leverage when it comes to these teams that they're going to be facing?
I think the defensive line. I mean, I also the main thing with Oregon is, coming into the playoff is, I mean, obviously they have a first round matchup that they are heavily favored in, but like hopefully they get healthier, right? I mean, I think that's going to be such a key for them. But I do think that a lot is going to be asked of the offensive line if they do play Texas Tech in that quarterfinal matchup. But I mean, they got dudes on the defensive line and they've got pass rushers and game wreckers. And so to me, I think that's what's really challenging about Oregon. I think with the offense, I lean more, the skill guys, the receivers, quarterback, more so than necessarily just the line. So I would go D line, which it feels like everyone who's a true title contender this year has great defensive lines or just front sevens in general. And I think Oregon's got one too. A bunch of guys who are going to be playing on Sundays.
This feels like that's what's different this year than past years. That, we've had, offenses like LSU in 2019 are just great offenses. This year, you've got a lot of really good defenses and not many offenses that really, surprise you that much. That's where I think I've got a little bit of confidence going into this for Oregon because I think they do have that offense at their best, obviously when healthy that can do that. But I want to talk expectations with you because you put out your playoff bracket earlier this week. You've got Texas Tech beating Oregon. Why is that? What do you see in that matchup that makes you feel that way?
Yeah, so that was a tough one for me because I actually think that's going to be, and again, I'm expecting that to be the matchup,
Mhm.
considering the first round matchups. But I think that could be one of the best games of the whole playoff. So I'm very much hoping that we get it, and I hope that it delivers because it's just strength on strength, right? Like all of the offensive firepower to Oregon, and then that pass rush, and just where Texas Tech put all that money into the defense. So I hope we get it. I think it'd be a great matchup. And I went back and forth on it because of what we're talking about the offensive advantages. Like Texas Tech, their offense is my biggest question with them as a title contender, because I think everyone else has much more productivity, or they're just more reliable. We watched two games with Texas Tech and BYU that were really ugly. And it was very difficult on both offenses to do much. And they're able to do just enough. Whereas, Oregon has a lot of different ways that they can beat you, a lot of different playmakers. And so I went back and forth on this, but I wondered too about Texas Tech's dudes, right? So the David Bailey and Jacob Rodriguez is like, they spent all this money to have, elite athletes and NFL guys up front and, rush the passer, make life hell for, most of the Big 12. And then that they could out athlete guys in a lot of their games. And then you get to the games where they play someone that's similar to them. And then it's like try to win in the margins, right? And that worked. Like they were able to basically like be more physical and be more talented than most of the teams in the Big 12. So while I am buying in on that defense, especially the front seven, and picking them to win that game, like that's my big concern. That like we saw them beat up on teams that they definitely were better than, and they have not played a lot of teams like in Oregon, like the teams that they would need to beat to actually get to the national championship game. But I ultimately went with them because I do think that their defense is that good, and this will be a really big test for them. But I gave them the edge. But this was one I could be wrong on. And I weirdly feel, and obviously you guys are noticing this, like I think a lot of people are not treating Oregon like a real national title contender. It feels like the top 4 seed lines, like the top 4 seeds are the group that people are talking about. And I've
Mhm.
been one of them talking about it that way. And I think it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind since the Indiana game. And then obviously, like, people watch, against USC and whatever, but then there's been injuries and whatever it is. But for some reason, it's been a little bit like a dark horse team and conversation, which I would think as an Oregon fan, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like that's better than being the one last year where like everyone
Absolutely.
was picking them to lose to Ohio State. And like, it was just like a lot more pressure. The bracket was
Mhm.
imbalanced. It was just like felt very different last year. So I would kind of want to be the sneaky, like the one that people aren't
Yeah.
picking. And then Texas Tech is the bright, shiny object. So I'm happy to be wrong on that one. But that's really kind of like my twisting logic on making that pick.
Yeah, and if you ain't right, you are wrong. So, right? Because I think one of the things that I feel confident about, and it's the trenches, right? So, what's the award they just won, Zach?
Joe
They're a
Moore, they're a
finalist for the
Joe,
finalist,
Joe
Joe Moore
Moore.
Award.
Yeah.
or they're a
Yep.
finalist. So, I mean,
Mhm.
this is the 3rd season in a row. The consistency is where I think Oregon has the advantage here, right? And the consistency comes from the coaching staff. Lapoy coming back on defense to finish out his tenure with Oregon, and then Will Stein coming back to finish out his tenure. So that to me screams health, right? Not
Yeah.
just
Does
physically,
it worry you
but
though that they'll be like
not at all.
pulling double
Because what
duty?
because when
Yeah.
if you're a player and you know you can cheer your coach on and his elevation in his career, and you can actually do it authentically when he comes back to support you in closing out your season. You know what I'm saying? It's basically this bond that actually means way more in situations like this. In playoffs, what are you playing for? If you're a player, what advantage do you have trust in? You have trust in your coaching staff. You have trust in your preparation. And when you talk about this offensive line, the consistencies of being a finalist in some offensive line award, basically, we're tougher than you award, right? We win the trenches. We win the hard battles up front award, which is, if you look at the NFL, you look at football over time, the teams that protect the quarterback the best, the teams that move the ball, move the chains, it's the team that has the best offensive line. You look at last year, the years previous, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, the offensive line is the reason why they were able to be so successful. You look at the defensive line. Defensive line is also on the other side of the ball where it frees up those linebackers to be busy. And so the advantage, in my opinion, is right there in Oregon, and we've been proving it all year long, especially in games where we needed it the most, when it was raining and pouring, and we had to basically say, "Hey, teams that are inferior to us, you're going to have to just survive this running game," and it's very hard to survive a running game when you have about 5 of them that can run.
Yeah, that's a valid point too, because that was the way that like that's where USC has been trying to close their gap is to be able to win games like that, and they can't, right? And that's like very much of the Oregon came into the Big Ten, everyone viewed it one way, but then you win games like that in a very physical, like traditional Big Ten style. So I'm with you. I mean, that's why I really hope that that is, and it should be obviously the matchup, assuming you take care of JMU for that quarterfinal, because again, like they have not been tested against an offensive line like Oregon's or like anyone they would have to play to get to play for a national title. And a lot of people have anointed Texas Tech and said they spent the money on these defensive linemen, these edge guys, these linebackers, and it worked. Well, it worked to win the Big 12, and now we'll see about the rest. And I
Yeah.
think that that's like going to be a really good test and challenge for that. I'll also say when I was filling out my bracket, I went back and forth on Georgia and Ohio State, which I also hope we get as a
Mhm.
semifinal game. And I don't know if you guys feel this way. I know it's only a couple years into the Big Ten, but you brought up the Joe Moore Award, got me thinking this. The 3 finalists are all Big Ten schools.
Mhm.
So I ultimately ended up with an all Big Ten national championship game because the narrative coming into the season in the last couple of years, and then I think the way it's played out is the SEC has more depth, but the Big Ten has the best teams at the top. And so I think that some of the way the awards and the All-America list, even like, Iowa is going to have like a zillion offensive linemen that win All-American awards and stuff like that,
Mhm.
right? Like I sort of leaned that late. So that's another reason why, again, wouldn't be shocked if Oregon wins that, because I do think like the upper echelon of this conference, might just be the best teams in the country, which would include Oregon.
And you mentioned it earlier. I mean, I think you're right in assuming that Oregon fans are very happy with where they're at right now. Last year, it was cool. They were the number one team. They kind of established themselves in the Big Ten. It was like, hey, look at us. We're really good. But then you got to feel what it was like to have that pressure and to have that, that number one ranking throughout the year. Um, we weren't happy when Indiana won earlier, but we were also able to look at that game afterwards and be like, okay, now that's a ton less pressure, and now you kind of start to figure out later in the season, like, oh, if we can get the 5 seed, that might be pretty good, the 5 or the 6
Five is
seed.
a
And
great spot. Five is
you
a
Mhm.
look
great,
you
great
look
spot.
at your path right now. I mean, I say this with all due respect to Texas Tech and Indiana. I think that if you could handpick a spot in this bracket, I don't think Oregon would trade with anyone. Texas Tech, like we said, one of the best defenses in the nation. Offense doesn't really scare you too much. Indiana, I think, is obviously really good. They beat this team before. They now have one of their best defenders out for the season. And I know that Oregon fans, they want them again.
Right.
Same way that Ohio State wanted Oregon again last year. Like, Oregon just wants that game again. They think they can win it. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of confidence with Oregon right now, being where they are, kind of flying under the radar and having no one talk about them.
The seating is a really good point, because last year we talked about it so much going to the Big Ten championship game. Like, would Oregon have been better off losing?
Mhm.
Yeah, probably,
Yes, they
right?
would have.
But now that they fixed and balanced the bracket, it does matter a lot again, but you still have such an advantage at the 5 spot versus even the 6 and the 7, because again, the 4 seed that you draw.
Mhm.
And no, it's not like as much of a drop off as like, the way we were talking about Boise State or Arizona State last year. But I'm with you completely. I think that half of the bracket feels much more manageable than the other half, where Georgia and Ohio State, you'd have to go through either one of those to get, or potentially both, depending on the draw, to get to the national championship game. So yeah, I'm with you, and that's actually that was one of my takeaways on Sunday, was Indiana getting the 1. Ended up making a big difference, because their
Good.
path looks a lot more manageable, like you guys are talking about, like it looks for Oregon. And I agree with you. Rematches are it's really hard to beat the same team twice, especially when it's
Mhm.
really, really close. But now you're really familiar with them. And as you mentioned, Stephen Daly expected to be out for the playoff run for Indiana. So I'm with you guys. I think it's a great spot for Oregon to be in, especially after the way last year ended, and trying to like gear up and try to get back to this particular spot, and make things right. I imagine too, the opportunity of getting to host a first round game, something that you guys didn't get to do last year, is awesome, especially in a game where you're favored by like 3 touchdowns. Um, all of that. I think it's just like, it's good vibes, it's good energy, and it's a good path for the Ducks.
Well,
Yeah.
what's interesting about that hosting too, sorry, Jay Stu, I'm in Eugene. I've talked to a lot of people who are almost disappointed that Oregon is such a big favorite, because they're like, these playoff tickets are expensive. Like, I'm gonna spend several $100s to go sit in
Go
the
watch a
cold and
blowout.
watch a blowout. Like, yeah, I get it's a playoff game, it's fun, but I kind of wish it was gonna be a better game. It's like, I hear that. And maybe I'm privileged by getting up in the press box and not having to pay for these
Sounds like a
tickets, but
bunch of entitled fans. That's what it sounds
eh,
like.
no,
This is this
they're
this is
they're
the
not
this is
entitled. They
how
want
I
a
see
better
it.
game.
I see this as an opportunity for Eugene to be a part of something. That's what I see
Mhm.
it, right? And you're not a lot of teams clearly are in this situation. Notre Dame. There's a lot of teams out there that wish they were in your position. Trust me. But I was going to say something just about the 5 spot in comparison to last year. One of the things that you know drains my sleep at night, if I'm a coach, is the time in between, right?
Mm.
Last year there was so much time in between, as far as game plans, as far as managing health and managing, kids at the end of the day with their time, and making sure they get to the bowl game in good health. Last year, you can tell that was a struggle. You can tell it was something that impacted their readiness on game day at the Rose Bowl. And that's one of the things that I was hoping and praying about too. We were talking earlier this year, and I'm like, I absolutely do not care if they play in a Big Ten championship. I actually don't want them to be in a
Yeah.
Big Ten championship. And so, to that point, Indiana beating us early and then us just handling business as usual for the rest of the season, that's the way in which things just ended up so perfectly for us. But what is your thoughts on conference championships
Mm.
and the meaning behind teams getting access to the playoffs?
Oh,
JMU,
could talk about this for a long
Tulane.
time. Yeah.
How much
So
time we got?
yeah, how much time we got? Okay, let's start with conference championships. Because I'll go back to like 2018 when I first started to talk to people and they were like, we need to expand the playoff from four.
Mhm.
And every idea and every person I talked to back then thought the way that like we all did, when you're just drawing on napkins and setting up a bracket, that you wouldn't have conference championships if you expanded from four. Um, then again, everything has to be unanimous. The SEC really values its conference championship game. Like it means a lot to those teams to play in Atlanta, to win that trophy, et cetera, et cetera. We also just saw that like record viewership for Indiana, Ohio State. So like these are valuable TV properties. But I always thought that you did not need them in an expanded playoff format. And you definitely don't. And we ran into problems this year with the ACC and the way that their tiebreakers went, that their best team was not playing in it, and their champion obviously created a path for JMU and Tulane to both get in because they weren't ranked. So I think the committee, I like what I was most interested on Sunday. Obviously, we all want to see how the Notre Dame Miami thing shook out, but I wanted to see if the committee was going to make a statement that like conference championship games should go away. Because I think if they
Mhm.
dropped Alabama out entirely, they'd go away tomorrow, right? Because no one's ever going to want to play in one if you would have been in before it and then you drop out afterwards. So I personally am interested to see how much longer they last. The way that people talk about them is like the sense of inevitability that like they're depreciating in value moving forward. It's part of the reason that you've heard these ideas like Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, and people being like, let's have a play-in weekend or something that's like there's more at stake, and it's sort of like build your case for the playoff like in the last minute. And I'm sure like if Notre Dame had an opportunity, or Notre Dame Miami could have played again, right? Like if
Hmm.
people had some flexibility with that weekend, I think it could be really great for college football. But until it changes, I think we're stuck with these where a lot of situations you're going to be like, well, both teams are in. Why go as a fan? And then, just sort of wondering about how it impacts seeding, if that, outside of that. So be interested to see. I think the SEC championship game is the one to watch of like, if that becomes less important to the SEC,
Mhm.
then
Hmm.
conversations can change on format. I understand where everyone is on the two group of five champions coming in, and it's not super exciting to look at a first round that has two super lopsided point spreads. Also two rematches, like it's
Yeah.
not great.
Yeah.
And so that's again, I think more on the ACC than anything else. Like JMU didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're
The
not.
power,
Hey, you
no,
know
and
what? I'm actually
some
happy
people
for
are,
JMU. Also
yeah. So
sad
some
because they're gonna get ran through. But
Yeah. Well, that's what, so some people are like, well, none of these teams should be there. And it's like, well, first of all, antitrust issues if you don't have access for everyone. But B, like, they didn't do anything wrong. They took advantage of the fact that the five highest ranked teams. Like, they were
but
good
that's
enough to get there. It's on
that
the
to me is
ACC
a
for not,
yeah. It's on
for,
them. The whole like let's involve everybody and give everybody a chance. No, that's not fair because a Division 1 player is actually better than they're better. They're just better talent. So they actually earn the right from high school through their path to get to a better school to actually have a chance to play in a playoff, right? And I'm
so
sorry,
you'd support a group of five playoff, a separate
I
championship
support
for
a
them?
play. I support college and Super League. That's how I see
Okay.
this. That's a,
Okay. Yeah.
and if we're gonna fix this, do it next year. Start the process. Let's not band-aid it because what you're doing is you're wasting time. The reason why the Indiana game and that Indiana and Ohio State game was so watched, you know why? Because they were the two best teams in college
Yeah.
football,
Yeah.
and it was the championship game before the championship game.
Yeah.
Forget Big Ten
So
championship. It was a legit heavyweight. We talked about it,
yeah.
Zach. It was a heavyweight
Mhm.
fight. That was
Yeah.
what people wanted to see. That's what people intended to see. Some people have that in their bracket because rightfully so. they're the best teams. So
Yeah.
to me, a lot of all of this has never made sense once they started expanding and not putting the certain protocols in place. It's just like you're trying not to hurt people's feelings. You're trying not to get sued.
Well, it's part of it. But I will also say, like, going from 4 to 12 was like when they went from 2 to 4, that was
Mm.
let's make sure we're not accidentally leaving out the best team in the country. Because again, like maybe one game they played or something weird with the BCS formulas. And that got validated because Ohio State wins year 1, right? And they were number 4. But this one was about access for more teams so that people start the season with a path. Yeah, you might get killed in the first round, but like there's a path to participate in it, keep more teams alive. I get it. And people are arguing over 10 and 2
Participation
and 9 and 3
trophies
teams.
are
but
non-existent in the
but
Stewart family. Great
that's
for
what the
you.
goals
Throw it
were
away.
here. But I know there's a lot of people who believe the way you do, but
Yeah.
that's not what this one is supposed to be for. So again, I think they'll tweak it. I think they'll put like floors on, like, you got to be ranked at whatever threshold to make it as a group of 5 team or whatever that looks like. But yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people feel
Yeah.
that. I just say, like, this is why they did it this way, is to have that access point so that half the sport starts the season and is like, all right, if we have a good season, if we do this, and this, we can play in the playoff.
Well, Nicole, I need you to go find the rooms to be in so that way you can make sure that this thing gets turned around.
Yeah.
Save college football.
I'll be right outside of those rooms bothering the people. So I'll
That's
ask your
it.
questions for you.
We for sure do not have enough time to figure out how to save college football in this episode.
We do
But
not.
I do want to get out with this question. There's been a conversation all year in Oregon about Dante Moore and will he stay for another year? Will he go? The general sense is that he's going to come back for one more year. But then the Will Stein hire happens, excuse me. That's a big change to have another coordinator. So I'm not sure where he's leaning right now. I still believe he's going to come back. But what do you think he should do, and what do you think he will do?
Oh man, those are tough questions. I absolutely think that, an offensive coordinator you've been with for 2 years, even not as a starter, is a huge factor in these decisions. I think you've got to look at the quarterback class in the draft as well for next year, right? You got to look at these things. I think people were penciling like Arch Manning is for sure going to be in this year's and it's going to be the number 1 pick, right? Like that stuff really changes quickly. And a lot of those SEC quarterbacks like really fell off, did not have the types of seasons that they were supposed to have. So I think you got to do the calculation, but you guys can make the case for me either way. Cause like, obviously there's a ton of natural ability, and the ceiling is super, super high, but do you want to be a little more consistent? Do you want to try to be like Heisman caliber numbers, and shoot for all of that? I don't know. I don't have a great answer there, but I think you do the math on the draft because we have seen like Drew Aller at Penn State should have gone last year. His draft stock was never going to be higher. And then obviously now he's injured and dealing with all of that, but also like the season completely went away from him. So I just think you got to be a little selfish. You got to look at where the quarterbacks are stacking up and make those decisions. Or if you transfer or stay or whatever it is, you set those specific goals and benchmarks and try to do them. But it's a risk. It's a risk. We saw it, and Garrett Nussmeier probably wishes he went last year. Like there's just a lot of that. And I love NIL keeping guys in school or creating options, or the transfer portal and letting guys play right away, creating options for guys to have another season if they want to play in a different system or they want to do whatever they want to do. But, it's just tough. We've seen a lot of guys kind of miss that window of where they would make the most money or get drafted the highest.
Yeah, that's a no easy decision for sure. All right, Nicole, we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it's a very slow time in the sport right now, so I'm sure you had
Very
nothing
slow,
better to do.
very slow.
Yes.
Yeah,
No, we really appreciate it. Enjoy all
Yeah,
of the
thank you,
football
Nicole.
coming your way, and we hope to talk to you down the road.
absolutely. Enjoy the first round game, even if it's a
Yes.
blowout.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right, good stuff with Nicole. Big thank you for her jumping on with us. I know it's a very busy time for her, so that was great to talk to her for a little bit. Before we get out of here, I just want to shout out our backer promo. You can see I'm wearing my new backer jacket, the cool one, the gray one that just came in yesterday in the mail. I love this thing. We are running a very cool email sweepstakes giveaway with backer right now, presented by the Believe in Oregon podcast. All you have to do, go to my social media, go to Jay Stew's social media, click the link. We've tweeted it out recently, excuse me. All you do, click the link, put in your email, click a couple of buttons, and submit your email, and you have a chance to win a Warm One, an Oregon Warm One backer jacket. That's a $350 value. I mean, what are you doing? Come on. It's all you got to do is enter your email address, and you've got a chance to win. That will get here before the first round playoff game on December 20th. It's expected to be a cold one, maybe a little bit wet too. So you'll be want to be bundled up in your backer gear. So again, go to my social media, go to my Twitter. I have tweeted it recently. Click the link into your email and have a chance to win. All right, we will be on. I'm not sure what our schedule is. I'm sure Jay Stu and I will come on early next week and talk more about the JMU matchup and kind of dive into that thing. You can check out more of my work at DucksWire at usatoday.com. Follow me at Zachary C. Neel on Twitter. And tune in next week as we break things down. Until then, take it easy.